with that behind us, we can continue on our merry examination of station operations. And let's just remind ourselves that next week, on Tuesday, we have class. On Thursday, we don't. And so next week on Tuesday, we are going to discuss final term paper topics. And, depending on how many people are actually here, because some people are already taking off for their Thanksgiving exodus. Well, whatever, we'll be discussing. So the final term paper is a lot like the first one that we did. So there are a set of topics that you can choose from. And, as I always like to do, I like to get you primed with some ideas and some connections from the topics to the textbook. I'd say, the only disappointment of the first round, apart from those people who still didn't get it in, which you should do, the only disappointment was just a lack of reference to the textbook. So that's one of the things that we'll try to focus in on Tuesday is just so you've got a great idea, you've got opinions, you got answers for the questions that are in the term paper topic, but you also want to prove that you went to the textbook and found out the relevant information such as it is. And that textbook, it's 300 pages long for a reason. Yeah, I mean, there's no way we can digest it all here in the classroom. But when you have your particular topic, it's possible to go in there and just look at the 2 or 3 pages that are related to your topic, and it may be in a couple of different chapters, and then that'll help you move from you'll just do the best possible job with the information that's out there. And of course, you're free to dip into other resources for additional information if the textbook doesn't have enough. But I always want to see people, starting with a textbook. So that's what we'll do on Tuesday. And of course, if you can't be present, you can stream or archive that discussion, and probably worth seeing. And then the week after, we talk about film, and then sort of social science research about media. Which would cover things like video games, other important things like what are called pro-social behavior. So that where researchers have managed to prove that there's some benefit to consuming electronic media in terms of education, socialization, etc. And that kind of stuff is not what you'd expect, simply because it's so hard to do this type of research and come to some conclusions that come anywhere near our basic assumptions. Of course, video games cause violent behavior, but when you actually try to research this in an objective manner, it's much harder to prove what kinds of effects we typically believe are happening with with electronic media.
There's some good tests out there.
Movies included. Good tests about it?
Yeah.
How so?
Like they'll just get people together and have them play like Grand Theft Auto or something, go crazy. And then after that, they'll show them videos of actual violence. And, they'll see how their brain gets stimulated, how they act if they pause it and turn away and stuff like that.
That's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. So, there's a range of different ways you can try to research this.
So many people are like,
a lot of it comes in.
Yeah. Violence is obvious. They're like, it's not real, so it's different.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other thing is, what's their predisposition in advance? So you need to, show them some stuff before they've been exposed to a couple of hours of,
palate cleanser of death.
Yeah, right. So it can be interesting. And some of the older research done by the Army on thousands and thousands of Army subjects, those were also, very behavioristic. Again, if you're thinking about whether Game of Thrones specifically inspires you to, it doesn't work that way. It's rather, what do heightened levels of anxiety produce, and what kinds of messaging actually, can cut through. And they're talking about, they had access to, tens of thousands of research subjects because they were in the Army. They were ordered to do it, So. But that's pretty old stuff. anyhow, it can be interesting, and it's definitely something that it's the most solid research that is done in electronic media versus I guess some of the other alternatives would be focus groups and things like that, and then you're always dealing with a very small group of people, and you're getting more kind of opinions, which can be useful, but are not so reliable for social scientists, who want to be able to have the last word on what electronic media affects. So that could be interesting. So back to the topic of the week, operations. And we won't have a Kahoot today, but maybe we'll throw in a Kahoot on Tuesday about Chapter 11. So last class we reviewed basic functions in the radio station, and we tried to sketch in a little bit about what it's like working in those different functions. And I just said broadly, and this would cover for television as well, the kind of divide that exists between the creative positions in a radio or TV station, so the talent who's on air, the producers who make the shows, the reporters, the camera operators, or audio engineers. These are all people that cost money and so are treated with less deference than the management and sales side of things. These are the people who bring in the money, and you could add promotions to that as well. These people are treated with more deference. They get more money, but they're, rather than being on salary, the sales department is almost exclusively on commission, right? Which is a more threatening position for most people. However, if you do it well, it can bring you more money than just about anything else in broadcasting. But it takes a particular personality who can exist under a lot of failure, and can also remain, really upbeat and friendly, and somebody you just want to keep calling back. If you're going to have to talk to a salesperson, if there's somebody you honestly like, that really goes a long way. And we've had at least one broadcast major here who had those skills and went to. There are a few kind of feeder schools. They're not really schools. They're more like kind of summer programs where you can go for a 3-week, crash media sales seminar, and you meet people who their job is basically to train sales operations in these stations, and they'll give you all the inside, and then perhaps even connect you with stations. You'd have to probably be willing to move for that kind of opportunity, somewhere. But as we said, the local stations, and we just saw here, if you look at Entercom, or you look at iHeartRadio, or they all have openings in sales. So that would be more like get in the front door kind of. And as I said, you have a few months with a basic salary before you have to start, providing for yourself through commissions. So if you're ready for stress, it's there, but the potential for success is, and moving quickly in some kind of job is there for sure. All right, so today we promised to talk about television stations, and they're kind of like radio stations, but they're bigger. And whereas radio stations have largely consolidated due to lifting the caps on radio station ownerships in 1996, so you can create an iHeartRadio with 8 radio stations clustered in one location on Townsend Street, for instance. And we talked about all the duplication of roles that would create, and so consequently people laid off or moving to other broadcasters, so that you kind of have a more skeleton team. Well, television stations did not have such a liberal cap lifting, if you want. Remember we talked about the duopoly rules, where in a local market, in a DMA, you can't have more than one of the top 4 stations. So basically you can't own, if you own a Fox station, you can't own CBS, ABC, or NBC station. This is just trying to keep the diversity of ownership alive there. But you could own a second station if you're in a duopoly arrangement, but it just can't be one of the top 4 if you're a top 4 owner. So consequently, the television stations, they don't cluster so much. You've got fewer TV stations, but they tend to be more fully staffed because they can't kind of team up and have 8 stations under the same umbrella, In addition, it's bigger money. The advertising sells for more. If you're a network affiliate, like we saw, you're getting a much larger audience, a much larger share of the local audience, basically. So there's bigger money afoot. And also in terms of the kinds of advertising you see, on television you'll see a lot more national advertising, which pays better. On radio you'll hear more local advertising, which doesn't pay as much per unit. So there are lots of reasons why television has more money in it, and so more people employed in it, and there's quite a difference going to a functioning radio station versus going to a functioning TV station. Micah, did you come to KTVU with us? Yeah. So last semester we visited KTVU with our announcing and performing class, and this coming up in the spring we'll go to another station. Not sure which one yet, but they all welcome us. So we got an inside look at what was going on there. It's always fascinating to go in. General management, again, you'll have a general manager at a station like this, and the management functions are largely the same. So you're operating a station, and you've got a lot of employees, and you've got to make sure that those that you want to keep are happy, and that the others are disciplined. I hate to say it that way, but it seems to be that way. GMs are also often involved in the public face of the station, so they have to go out and talk on behalf of the station and stuff. Accountants, bookkeepers, all of these things would be pretty much just an office job. I remember getting out of school, wanting to be in production, and seeing my friends a few years later and say, they worked for these huge broadcasters, and say, oh man, that's incredible, because I'm making corporate videos for like tiny little companies, and you're working for these, giant companies. And they'd say, yeah, but it's just an office job, I'm just there like filling in paper and stuff. So it's another route to go. Again, engineering, this is a very specialized function. You got to have an engineering degree. You've also got to get qualifications and licensing as a broadcast engineer. And there's a lot of knowledge necessary to just comply with the FCC. And in addition to that, now in television, the technical infrastructure is much bigger. You've got bays full of non-linear editors who are doing they're working on those, doing the editing of the television reporting that comes in. You've got all of that is networked, so you've got reporters and just basically staff writers who write the stuff that people say on air, and that's networked. Like they'll finish a story and it'll get pushed right into the lineup of the evening where the director will have all that text. It'll get pushed right into the teleprompters on set, so that the anchors can read it and stuff like that. So a bigger job in terms of engineering. You've got to have people on stage who are doing the lighting and making sure that all the camera operations are functional. So it's a much bigger job. And and production. So in addition to the engineering aspect, there are those people who light the sets and involved in the whole kind of visual package that television is, Micah, do you have any recollections of the KTVU visit in terms of just that type of thing, like being on the sets and
I remember there's so many more lights than you would ever think. Even when I worked in the theater, there's just so many more. Mm-hmm. It's just everything that's not taken up by pretty set is all equipment.
Yeah, true. Yeah. And like at the KTVU anchor desk, you sit down at it, and not only are there a ton of lights, right? There's screens there. There's like little soft lights, like sort of in the desk that shine up to give them that completely flat, perfectly lit look. It was like, and you're reading through to the prompter, and there's like lights up here, lights down here, and you got this like window that you can actually see stuff. It was pretty cool, I thought. This is, of course, this was part of my job too, was being in there once in a while. But I wasn't. I was one on the camera teams that would go out with the reporters and record actual sit-down interviews and stuff. Usually those were sort of non-union jobs, and the union jobs would all go to the people who were in the station itself, and that's still true. They'd all be unionized, all the technicians there. Versus camera operators who go out in the field could be more often freelancers, and there's a big difference there, right? I mean, you'd know this from any other type of work, but obviously when you're unionized and you're a permanent employee, there's health benefits and there's salary scales and stuff like this, versus when you're a freelancer, you're basically billing them as a private contractor. You take care of your own health insurance.
Is that how being a cameraman
it is?
Kind of works? I always thought, like, watching games or watching a fight, seeing the dudes filming, I'm like, how do you just bounce around, or are you connected? A contract? I never understood how that worked.
Yeah, well, you should have come on when Pete DeLonzo was here on Tuesday, because he is an NBC. He's done work for a lot of different broadcasters, but. So these jobs in the studio, unionized jobs, are fewer and fewer. It's mostly because robots do that now. I wanted to get to that in a second, but to respond to Mason's question, yeah, definitely the way into television production is going to be through freelance, and because I did this for about the first 10 years after I got out of school, So typically what you do, and this still goes on, is the camera is the expensive piece of equipment in all this. So you got to be old enough and have a good enough credit score that you can borrow $50,000 for a camera, a truck, and whatever related lighting equipment that you need. The price came down a little, but. And then you basically sell your services for anywhere between $500 to $1,000 a day with your truck and your camera. And you may need an assistant to do audio, which is typically the way you'd get into it. That's the way I did too, because I'd done more audio in school than anything else. But anyway, so I just started going out with these camera operators, and so for that you'd make at the time it was like $250 a day. It's probably about $350 a day now. And if you bought your own equipment, you could charge another $100 or $125 to rent that equipment to whoever, So, and then eventually, after a few years of that, you'd learn a hell of a lot just by being with the camera operator, seeing them do 1,000 interviews and helping them set that up and stuff. So eventually, you could, find your way into that. Now, I didn't have the capital to buy a camera. And I had a vehicle, but not a nice vehicle. We used to call it the mobile coffin, because we were in Canada and it was like slippery roads and stuff, So anyhow, I got in with a guy who he'd come in from like a smaller. It was as though somebody moved from Sacramento to San Francisco, and but he brought 2 cameras with him, and so he needed guys to work with him. So I started working with him. And eventually he had 8 cameras, and this is just when they went to high definition TV. So he had 8 high definition cameras, and so that's how I got to move from being the audio guy into a camera operator without spending all that money to get a camera. So I couldn't make that extra money renting my gear, but I could, I learned a lot, and that was the way that went. I got out of it after 3 more years, like when I was 30, but he stayed in for 5 more years, and he sold that company for millions of dollars to another company. Basically, he got out of it. But at that, and the whole thing was he had, built that up, got all those cameras, and then sold it. And now I see him on LinkedIn. He's a VTR operator in a big TV studio because he wanted the retirement benefits and stuff. So he just, he made like millions before he was 40, and then he just went and talked to his connections and got a job in a TV station. So he was really successful at it. But there's other folks who, clearly the guy who came in to see us on Tuesday, Pete, he's probably in his 50s and he's still doing, games basically. So that kind of thing, you may work 100 days out of the year. You don't really choose what those days are. Sometimes you'll work like 10, 15 days in a row. Then you won't have anything for a month and you get scared and you start taking whatever, and you're constantly calling people to like keep your connections up.
Super old school way of making your business.
Yeah, and you know what he was saying to us? He was, we one of the broadcast club members asked, well, how do you get on? How do you do this? He said, you gotta like be face to face. And he said, if there's like a huge event going on, I don't know, an Olympics in Atlanta or something going on in Houston, he literally said, try to get down there and talk to people, if you can get in with the union there, like NABET is the National Association of Broadcast Engineers and Technicians. It's one of the big unions. He said if you can get in and start getting qualified there, it's like it's a national network. If you worked on a NABET shoot somewhere else, you come back here, you've got a connection already. So he was saying it really is like a face-to-face type of thing.
Word of mouth.
Yeah, absolutely. And he said when you get on, keep your mouth shut, work really hard, and this goes for women as well as men, work really hard, and because it's a very, the old school was very kind of like, you had to be a guy to do this. It's no longer that way, but you're still going to find the people who are entrenched. They're probably guys, and so you have to, deal with like just listening and say, oh, so this is how you do that? Oh, okay. And even if we told you different in school, it's like, no, this is how you do it? Okay, I want to know how you do it. So he was really interesting to hear about that. Yeah. Now, of course, there's a lot of other openings that these entrenched people know nothing about. Anything dealing with newer technology. Anything dealing with social media outreach, connections to the web and stuff like that, they don't know anything about it. So the door's a lot wider open, and you'll find positions that are kind of like in online advertising and web production and stuff like that. At all these stations are a lot more open. Let's just see. I pulled up some things happening here. So just KTVU, because we were there last time, so first of all, in terms of production jobs, do we have any pictures here? I was hoping for, what's up with this here? Let's just see here. This is a trend I wanted to talk about, which is the increasing automation of studio TV production, which is why, the people who tend to still be there are older people who are unionized, and there's not a lot of openings for younger people in terms of being a union employee and stuff. So you got your on-air talent who are a whole different story, but in terms of the people who do the production, there used to be a whole range of positions from audio and camera operators, people doing the lighting and set maintenance or even construction on set. You had a studio manager who'd be like, organizing all the work that was going on. You'd have several camera operators who were shooting a show. But increasingly, automation means that the cameras can operate robotically. They're on motorized pedestals, like tripods on wheels that actually drive themselves around.
That's what happens with football games too.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, they're on wires.
Yeah. You see them flying.
Yeah, but that actually has a pretty amazing. We have a video on that I can show you at some point. But yeah, that has a very skilled operator who's actually doing the controls of that flying. But these studio operations have no. Whatever.
Hi.
Oh, hi. behind the scenes, there used to be a whole team of people who would direct the show, like a director who'd be there going, okay, ready camera 2, take 2, okay, ready camera 1, move in, close up, all that kind of stuff. When we went to KTVU, we saw one very stressed individual controlling the entire thing.
They were very stressed.
They were very stressed. That may just have been his personality, but still. So he was using this thing called Grass Valley Ignite, and Grass Valley is, hey, local company, right? One of the biggest names in broadcast technology for decades. This thing is called a switcher. And so this thing switches between cameras on a news set, for instance. And again, there used to be a director back there and somebody who actually pushed the buttons of the switcher. There'd be an audio mixer who would be controlling the levels of the microphones, and so on and so forth. They're all gone. There's just one very stressed individual who is programming all of that in advance into a computer with all of these different screens. And so, some of them will control the cameras, what camera we're gonna see. Some of them will control the audio, so that one person also turns up the volume on all the mics and stuff like that. So the actual news broadcast is incredibly fine-tuned in an electronic event, kind of, so that they know that we're going to start the show and we'll use this camera on the 2 anchors, and then they know it down to the second. Eventually we're going to have the weather report. We use this camera on the weather person, and they have this mic. It's always mic number 14, and we already have a little macro programmed in here so that at that time the harried individual clicks the button and we switch to that camera, and that microphone goes up, and there the performer is there, and it's just like, it appears like effortless. And all of this is basically controlled by one person, and all of this automated technology. So and there's various different systems, but over at KTVU they had the Ignite system, which they're trying to sell us in this video. So that has eliminated some of the technical jobs, but let's just take a look at, so KTVU has internships, by the way. All of them will have internships. They tend to privilege four-year college graduates, but our friend Sammy Mamou, who works over at KTVU, who is our host over there, he was saying that there are workarounds. If you take a summer, like an extended learning summer class, which could actually cost you money, but if you do that, you could get through, and that would qualify you perhaps for a Fox internship. So something to bear in mind. But let's just see what kind of actual jobs are there. There's probably a range. There usually is. So there's a stage manager job. So somebody who's, even if it's just one person clicking all the macros behind the scenes, on the set, there still needs to be someone who's in charge of, did part of the anchor desk fall off last night? We got to get that fixed. Is that robot behaving bizarrely? We got to make sure that the wheels are all working right on the robot that drives the camera around. And by the way, there has to be one real camera operator on set.
Is that a union provision? I
believe so, yeah. But it's also just good in that if everything kind of went haywire, at least you could have one person who would be doing this. Creative services director, so this would be more like a sales and advertising type of thing. So responsible for promotion, design, retail, okay. Promotions producer, so we talked about that as in radio as being a quick way in. So here, in TV, it's just as much about, again, you want to get your billboard advertisements out. You're advertising for the station in other media, and it's in television. There's much more of that, and comparatively less of, let's work together and do a community festival or give, a presence for the station at a farmer's market or something like that. Look at the qualifications. So these things you could learn here. Working knowledge of the Adobe suite of editing and design software, right? Premiere and After Effects. My colleague Misha teaches classes in those, BCST 141 and above. You could check those out. 2 to 4 years experience writing, so we have a writing class. so on and so forth, videography and lighting skills. So those would be interesting. Is there a, oh yeah, here's a job for someone who actually just does camera. So there's always a few people always on call, not on call, like sitting there waiting for an assignment. A couple of videographers who would go out with the reporters and shoot the bigger, reports. Some more and more you also have reporters who are they call them one-man bands, and at Cron, actually there's a lot more one-woman bands right now, but at Cron, you'd go out with a kind of backpack with your camera in it and a tripod and the audio, and you're the reporter as well as the camera operator, everything, and you go and shoot your interview and stuff and your footage, and then you upload that right away to the station. So these news ENG photographers would usually, let's just see what they would do. Seek out and shoot live action, breaking news stories, monitor two-way radio from newsroom and monitor police scanners for information on news stories, drive reporters to the scene of live breaking, and some of them are going to have to be able to work that truck as well, the microwave truck.
Candidates must have excellent driving record.
Yeah. I had a friend who was a camera operator who got a DUI and it finished his career, right? That's it. You can't drive for a year, you're out of it, completely out of it. So you got to find something else to do. Olive?
I have a question. So they're advertising to get photographers and stuff, and you said Cron 4. I'm assuming Cron 4.
Well, this is KTVU, but Cron would for sure. Yeah.
I was going to say though, but you just said that they're like one-man band. Is that because they're becoming cheaper? And
Yeah.
People?
Right. So when you see a reporter standing out, it's 10 o'clock and I'm here on scene, they call that a stand-up. So that requires a reporter, but also a camera crew who goes out in those trucks with the microwave dishes on top. So, and there may be one other person handling that, but typically now all of it can be done by one person driving, setting up the camera, making sure that so that requires, a professional photographer and such. But in the little news items where somebody's gone out to, a local high school and there's like I don't know, something that's happened there.
There's water. There's lead in the water.
Okay, there's lead in the water, right? So that would be you, if that was your job, you'd go out with your backpack and your camera and everything. You get into work at 8 in the morning and they'd say, okay, Olive, this is your story. You'd be calling, okay, where can I find some people who maybe are afraid they've got lead poisoning, and they probably have some leads on that because they have people working overnight on the assignment desk who actually try to set that up. So you drive out there, go to their house, set up the camera, put the little microphones on them, and you'd have a list of questions. And you say, okay, what's this? And then you'd go, okay, next I got to get to the school. So you drive over there, set your camera up, shoot a few things, from a legal distance and stuff. And then, then either you bring it all back, which was in my day, you'd have to drive it all back. But now what they do is they have there's a bunch of packages, but basically they'd have 3 dedicated cell phone lines, and they would work together just to upload the data from everything you shot. So you take the little card, you put it in a card reader, and that card reader then would send all of your footage through these, kind of 3 cell phone lines working together to give you, enough data transfer.
That's good. You're saving gas.
Oh, you are, yeah, and they're saving money, right? They're saving a lot of money because, and while we were there, I actually saw one of the editors in the bay, editing a story which had just been kind of sent to them, and you could see, that producer was just there, reading the script off her phone, and she had emailed the script to him, so he was reading the same script, following her directions as to how it should be cut together at the station, So and they have a news desk there, which basically the word comes out from the news producers, what stories are we going to cover, and that they make the assignments. They know who the reporters are in on that day and stuff, and so they send them out. But sometimes they're doing nothing. I don't know if it was the day we went in, but there was a Pete's Coffee truck, and they were just giving coffee away or something in honor of, I don't know, International Coffee Day or something.
It was something pretty dumb.
It was pretty dumb, and so the reporter clearly had been there for 3 hours just giving people coffee and saying, you like this and stuff. It was really, So sometimes it's slow news day, I guess, But then on the other hand, you get a Santa Rosa thing, and our colleague Jenny in the other class, she was trying to get people to talk to her, and they were all like in the North Bay, just like because there's just a million stories to report and so much going on, and that or the earthquake coverage they did, like so basically the whole place is empty. Everybody, even the anchors, move up to like a Santa Rosa or something, and they do the whole thing live from there, So and other, just we were talking to I can't remember her name, but she was talking about being on air and ad-libbing for hours, due to some kind of disaster that they were covering, and it was like nothing was more important. But you're just sitting there with like an earplug, talking constantly. We got some breaking. Okay, we've got some video. Like it's up in 30 seconds. And she, being a professional, would just know what to say in the next 30 seconds and stuff. And not kind of like, what are you saying? It's like pretty incredible. They're real professionals there for sure. And others. Local sales, account executives. So these are the ones that are more sales oriented. So they've got them. I am looking at these. Many of these have a 4-year bachelor's degree as a minimum requirement. Even the ENG photographer, it's a 4-year.
The first one's a 2-year.
Really? So that's
associate's degree.
There you go. Yeah.
Or technical school.
Yeah, so this is somebody working behind the scenes on set, so that's something you could consider doing right out with a 2-year degree. A lot of them are bachelors if they're kind of public facing. So yeah, when you go in there, you can feel why people still want to work in old school television, because it's pretty exciting. And even if you're not, I'm not so impressed by celebrity anchors and stuff, but they have huge audiences that that really care about Julie Hayner or Dennis Redmond, who back in the day for like 20 years was the KTVU main anchor. And,
It's Dennis Richmond.
Dennis Richmond, sorry, yeah, thank you. Thank you, JP. Oh no, I said the wrong name. Oh, there you go. Oh, God. All right, what else can we say about this? Program director. Yeah, so where does programming come for a station like that? Well, they're a Fox affiliate, so they air everything that Fox sends them. But in addition, they'll have, a block in the mid-morning where they're going to have local programming. And so they'll do shows. So again, Sammy Mamou, who was showing us around, is a producer on one of those morning shows. And so what's his job? Like booking guests, really down to, do they have a parking permit? When can they be here? Oh my God, we changed something. Somebody canceled on us. Can we find somebody for tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. or something like that? Kind of exciting job there. And working with the program producer, so things like that. The news, of course, they pour enormous amounts of money, as you could tell, into the news production area, and that pays them a lot of money because that's where they don't have to split their advertising costs with Fox. So all the advertising they sell around the news, that's all their money completely. So that's how news can be financed that way. It's usually the most watched live, obviously, because news is old news is not really news. So that's where you get a big local live audience. That makes it a big deal. Otherwise, a program director is looking to fill in after 10 o'clock. They're buying syndicated shows and stuff. Anybody watch KTVU? You know what they for ages they had Seinfeld as a syndicated show. They still.
I think they do like at midnight.
Yeah, that's when that stuff usually comes.
They also show The Simpsons and other like Fox.
Oh really?
affiliates.
Oh okay.
Pretty sure.
Interesting. So they'd get a deal on that because it's a Fox product and stuff. So yeah, and, we talked about most stations being affiliated with a network. So I think KTVU is it's part of a duopoly. I think they own another station.
KICU?
KICU, thank you. That's
That
right.
used to be TV 36.
Right.
Is that Channel 5?
That's Channel
KTVU?
6.
KTV is 2, I
Two,
believe.
okay.
Oh, there they are. KICU is there as
Oh.
well, right?
Okay, Channel 2, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they. I mean, that came to them. I believe they wanted to own and operate KTVU, and Cox, for a long time, a company called Cox owned KTVU and KICU as a duopoly. And I have a feeling Fox may not have wanted to buy both, but that was sort of the deal. They probably had to buy both. Because it's, KICU doesn't seem to have, they haven't set it up as a separate programming operation or anything. So it's a classic duopoly situation there, I guess. But where were we on this? Yeah, so programming, if you were involved in programming, you'd have to be thinking about 2 stations from that. And you're looking at buying a lot of syndicated programs for your both those stations. Now the funny thing is, Cron is affiliated with a secondary Fox network called My Network TV, which is not. It doesn't provide the Fox network shows. It provides like a package of syndicated stuff, much less interesting to the My Network affiliates. So you would have expected KICU to be a My Network affiliate, but I guess it couldn't be because Cron is. And Cron is, right, owned not by Fox at all, but by the Young Broadcasting Corporation, I guess, whatever. So anyway, they've affiliated with My Network, which is a much smaller network that doesn't get you much when you're an affiliate. But most stations are affiliated because otherwise you have to go and buy all of this stuff independently, and that's hard work. Other stuff to talk about. Sales and promotions are somewhat similar to radio, except that bigger business. The other thing is you'll have a certain number of account executives, pointed towards the local market, but you'll have more personnel dealing with national sales because these are, big television stations in big markets. There's more activity from national advertisers than there would be in radio. Look at that. Sales is often quickest path to upper management. So as we said, to become a GM, it's rarely, if ever, happens that a star DJ would become a general manager. It's more often like a star salesperson who'd become a GM because you've demonstrated that you can bring the money in, So that's part of it, right? And then we go on to cable. We'll pick this up on Tuesday, I guess, if we pick it up at all. But fun jobs, exciting jobs. Anyway, so have a good weekend. Those of you who make it on Tuesday, we'll see you Tuesday.
Yeah, I just found out yesterday that Thanksgiving was next Thursday.
Oh, okay.